Hi folks, welcome to the Prepared Homestead. This is Travis. Thank you all for stopping by to watch. So for about a year and a half now or so, we've been having a on and off conversation here on this channel of how the government and the government's agencies view you and I. It's not very favorable. You already know this. I'm not telling you anything new, right? We've talked about how the media, pop culture, all the media people, everything from the Hollywood to the news, have done everything they can to try to slant any type of conservative, traditional value, Bible-believing American into this crazy, radical, terrorist, disgusting, deplorable person that should be no longer part of society, should be extricated and should be removed from society, right? We've been talking about this, and little by little the government is using language that's getting closer and closer and closer to the point to where they just come right out and say it and say, anyone that doesn't agree with us, anyone that believes in the Constitution, conservative values, traditional values, limited government, any of those kind of issues, then you're just a bad guy. You're just someone that should be locked up and put away, and then the goon squad's going to come get you. I mean, they might as well come out and say it because it's getting to that point. A couple of days ago, well, before I go to that one, there's been two things from DHS. The Department of Homeland Security is now issuing a warning of this trucker protest convoy. They've issued a warning saying that they have verifiable intelligence that this is going to start this weekend at the Super Bowl. I didn't even know that the Super Bowl was this weekend until I read that. I thought, oh wow, I don't even care, but it's this weekend, and they're saying that they have strong intelligence stating that the trucker protest is going to try to shut down the Super Bowl. And so they're issuing warnings to law enforcement. Now take heed of this, folks. These are people that are, for the most part, exerting their constitutional right, protected First Amendment right to protest and to speak out against the government. And we've got an agency of Homeland Security that is issuing warnings to law enforcement, treating them much as if it was some type of terroristic threat to the nation. So there's that. I've said already that this whole trucker protest thing, while there's a lot of good about it, and I'm not saying I don't support it, I do, but I just want to keep warning people that I have strong feelings on this, that they're going to use this to their favor. They're going to twist it around. They're going to blame all these crazy, radical, patriotic extremists on, the supply chain being collapsed, on trade being halted, on this, all this kind of stuff, and it's gonna get twisted and turned. It's gonna be put into their favor. They can turn around and say, yeah, see, it's all those people's fault. That's why your store shelves are empty, and that's why everything is collapsing around us. It's all their fault. Then DHS has issued a new revised threat warning. This one originally, I think it was issued back in January, and then they've revised it just a couple of days ago. And so I want to read this to you. Now, keep in mind, and I've said this before, and I've gotten in the past a few comments and people telling me, say, well, this is too extreme. This is talking about the really bad people. And most of us, most of you and myself, in our minds, we think of what a terrorist would be and the bad things that they would do. And we're like, yeah, they should be stopped. I mean, of course, the law enforcement should go in and they should, investigate and arrest and prosecute and put those people, they're bad people. They want to do outrageous things. And they want to hurt people. And we understand that. And what I've been trying to get the point across is because they're so vague sometimes in the way that they define stuff, that the way they define stuff, it includes, it's a way bigger umbrella term than what you think. We're not talking about like Timothy McVeigh kind of people. Yeah, that's included. But a lot of their definition of terms also is starting to get into the gray area of including people like you and I. And that's one thing, if you don't know this, I learned this several years ago when I dipped my toes into politics. And politicians, one thing they are good about, they're great at redefining terms that you and I and most any rational thinking person would say, well, that's what that term means. And so they put it in a bill and people read it and like, oh, well, that's what it means. But at the end of the bill, it has a little definition of terms, and they've actually defined that word completely different than what anyone else would ever think it would be. They're great at doing that. So keep all that in mind while I read this. And then I want you to think for yourself as I'm reading this, how could this be misconstrued? How could they take this authority and run with it? How could this be misused and perverted and twisted into including folks like you? Summary of terrorism threat to the U.S. homeland. The United States remains in a heightened threat environment fueled by several factors, including an online environment filled with false or misleading narratives and conspiracy theories and other forms of dis, and malinformation, introduced and or amplified by foreign and domestic threat actors. These threat actors, now, from what I understanding, these threat actors, that term is basically people that get online and talk about government and how we got to do something about it, and point out and spread the misinformation and the conspiracy theories. So, in other words, it sounds like a lot of us, is what they're describing. These threat actors seek to exacerbate societal friction and to sow discord and undermine public trust in government institutions to encourage unrest, which could potentially inspire acts of violence, mass casualty attacks, and other acts of targeted violence conducted by lone offenders and small groups acting in furtherance of ideological beliefs and or personal grievances pose an ongoing threat to the nation. While the conditions underlying the heightened threat landscape have not significantly changed over the last year, the convergence of the following factors has increased the volatility and unpredictability and complexity of the threat environment. Number one, the proliferation of false or misleading narratives, which sow discord to undermine public trust in government institutions. So if you get on there and you say something that is contrary to maybe Snopes or the fact checkers on Facebook, is that sowing discord and undermining public trust in the U.S. government institutions? I mean, there's all this stuff going around that the Biden administration is handing out free crack pipes. And then the Snopes got online, and I don't know if I can show it to you. If I can, if I have it, I'll put it up there. And they basically said, well, this is mostly false because that program does way more than just that. That program does all kinds of other things. And while it's not the primary focus of it to do it for racial equality, it is kind of a secondary focus of that program. And yet they said it was actually a false statement that they were handing out crack pipes for racial equality. And it's insanity, folks. It's the biggest way. I can't imagine any more gaslighting than this. So remember that the proliferation of false or misleading narratives which sow discord or undermine public trust in a government's institution. That's a threat. That's considered a terroristic threat to the United States homeland. Second, continued calls. This is a little bit more in with what you and I would normally consider domestic terrorists. Continued calls for violence directed at U.S. critical infrastructure, soft targets, and mass gatherings faith-based institutions such as churches, synagogues, and mosques, institutions of higher education, racial and religious minorities, government facilities, personnel including law enforcement, military, the media, and perceived ideological opponents. And 3, calls by foreign terrorist organizations for attacks on the United States based on recent events. So the last 2, for the most part, sound like what any normal, rational, thinking American would consider, a terroristic threat. But now they've got this first one. So anyone that spreads false or misleading narratives, well, who's the one that decides what that is? Is it the news media? Is it Facebook fact checkers? I guess are they the one that decides that? Oh, this is false or misleading information. Well, I've got 50 doctors over here that's saying different. I've got the guy that actually invented the technology. The guy that invented the technology is saying this. Oh, nope, that's a false narrative. That's a false or misleading narrative. Oh, and it's sowing discord. It's encouraging people to do things that the government doesn't want you to do. It's encouraging people to rebel against mandates and rebel against stuff. It undermines the public trust in the U.S. government. Do you see how far we've become, how we've come? Do you see how we are moving very rapidly from this nation that, even though we don't agree with each other, we can still have an open civil conversation about the things that we disagree on, to if you don't follow the narrative, if you don't toe the line and you don't agree with us, it doesn't matter if we're right or wrong. If you don't just do what we tell you to do, we have all the power, we have lots of authority and lots of force that we will use against you to shut you up and to put you away. Do you see how we're taking one more step in that direction? Are we there yet? Are we at the point that they're going to be kicking doors down and hauling people off because of things like that? Maybe, maybe not. Probably not yet. But it has happened in little pockets here and there based on, what someone posted online, and it has happened in other countries. But how far are we away from the point where that just becomes the norm, where everyone just knows that if you speak something out of line or you post something online that doesn't toe the line of the official narrative, then, they're going to come and look for you and ask you some questions and take you somewhere where you don't even know where you're going. How far away are we from that day? 5 years ago, how many of you would have thought you would hear something like that? Hear that people that are spreading conspiracy theories and narratives that are contrary to the government are a domestic terrorist. How many of you would have thought that would have happened? Here we are today. What's going on, it's changing. And it's not just changing. I've said that many times. I say that almost every day on here. It's changing rapidly, folks. We are rapidly. It's picking up speed as it's rolling downhill. As we're falling off the cliff, we're picking up speed, folks. We're seeing things change around us every day. We're seeing the normalization of repugnant things, of deviant activities that most any normal person, especially just a few years ago, would have said, that's wrong, that's disgusting, that's repugnant. And now we're normalizing it. We're normalizing it with our children, we're normalizing it in the media, and, the hatred amongst each other, spreading these lies about, this skin color and that skin color and how they hate each other. The lies that are being spread about your health and about what they're doing to improve your health. All these lies. Do you see that it's picking up speed? Do you see that it's happening more and more? You see the politicians, the White House spokesperson stands there and says, oh, the trucker protest isn't about mandates. That's what she said. Did you see that clip? When they asked her about them, she's like, oh, no. Those trucker protests, that's not, they're not about mandates. And all the data that we have show that the mandates actually help the economy and help people with jobs. And there's no negative effects to them whatsoever. No economical, no social negative effects whatsoever. Absolute lies. They say it right in your face. Do you see that it's getting worse? Do you see that it's picking up speed, folks? Ask yourself, are we just gonna one day wake up and turn around and go back the other direction? No, we're past that point. We're watching Rome fall and burn. Get yourselves ready, folks. And I mean really get yourselves ready. Get your houses in order, prepare yourselves mentally, physically, and spiritually. Thank you all for watching. I'll catch you in the next video.